of the matriculants of 2024 can really vouch for this when they just take a deep breath and a sigh and say, Alhamdulillah, we've done this together. That is what we as parents are meant to do, actually, to support our children best way possible. But how can we support them if we ourselves don't understand certain things? And today we're talking about something that I don't think we really understand, and it's coding, right? So let's chat about this. Join us live on Facebook. We're joined now by Maulana Bilal Kathrada, who believes that schools are getting it wrong about coding. Let's find out why, what he thinks. And he believes that coding isn't just about technology. It's about giving kids the tools to create, to learn, and engage in something meaningful. Assalamu alaikum, Maulana Bilal. Welcome back to Urban Women.
Walaikum salam, and it's a pleasure to be here as always, Razia.
Alhamdulillah, can you believe it? We're already in 2025, a new year, and so much for us, obviously, to understand if we want to really be impactful and make a difference. So share with us, Maulana, why do you believe coding is so important for our kids?
So as a father, and I think every parent that's listening to this will resonate with me, we always want the best for our children. And I feel sometimes it's actually criminal in the way that we expect our children to just just learn random facts and random facts where and it's hard, it's difficult taking in something when you're not truly passionate about it. Or let's put it a different way. Educational experts say that there's a way of learning called constructivism, where you learn by creating things, by observing and creating. And I'll give you an example, right? Let's take cooking. If you had to learn about different types of olive oil and different types of chilies and it's boring. But if you go into the kitchen and there's a special occasion happening and you're learning how to cook a meal start to end and present it beautifully for your VIP guests, that's interesting. Why? Because on the one hand, you're just learning concepts and facts. And on the other hand, what you're actually doing is you're building something, you're creating an entire meal. So it absorbs you in. Now, we as adults, we know that learning random concepts versus actually doing and creating something, the creating part is much more effective for us. With children, it's all the more like that. And the trouble is, and this is why I say it's really sad what we do with kids, in school, they almost never get a chance to create anything that is presentable in the real world. Like something as simple as baking a loaf of bread, right? A child bakes a loaf of bread. How good does he or she feel about it? It boosts their self-ego. They'll never stop talking about it. So we're not giving them that in school. So when it comes to coding, I feel there's too much of emphasis in schools, even with the government, around the technology aspect of coding. It's not about tech. Not every child is going to go and become a tech professional or a software developer. There's something more to it, which experts are telling us now, that when a child learns to code, firstly, depending on the project, right? The child builds a project like an app. If a child builds an app, now you are solving a real world problem. You can take that app that you've built, share it with others, show everyone, show it to your parents, your peers, your siblings, and say, hey, I actually created this app or this video game or this software. Now, how empowering is that for the child?
Absolutely.
How amazing. Like I've done one, now I want to do the next and the next and the next. That's what inspires learning. And my mission in life is to inspire children to want to learn, not just to be forced to learn, but to want to love to learn. That's what's missing. That's why I say coding is so much more than just the technology, which is a tiny part of it. It's the act of creating something, thinking, dreaming about something and bringing that into the real world. That's what kids need in their lives.
That's amazing. And that makes so much of sense, because when a child feels I've accomplished something and they're getting that level of praise, it's so fulfilling and they naturally want to do more. I think this is human nature as well. So it's about allowing them to realize I can do so much. That's wonderful. What would you say, Maulana? How does coding also help kids develop important skills like problem solving and also critical thinking?
That's a good question. Coding is all about solving problems from the start, right? So let's say you wanna build an app, you wanna create an app. The first thing that happens in your head is what? You start conceptualizing, you start imagining what will this app look like, who will use it, what kind of buttons will
Mhm.
be there on it, when this button is pressed, what will happen, etc. And so
Right.
you create a problem statement for yourself, and then you start writing code. And trust me when I tell you, Razia, and I've observed kids coding, there's no feeling that's as liberating as having this problem that you've got and breaking it down now and solving that problem just by writing code. So they write this code and they see this thing coming alive on the screen, and then they share it with everyone and say, Mom, Dad, look at me. I just built this video
Wow.
game or this app or this website. So it teaches, it's intrinsically problem solving. And that kind of
Mhm.
approach to teaching, right? They say, educational experts, and I hang around a lot with educational experts, they say that there's two types of motivation:
Right.
intrinsic motivation and extrinsic. So extrinsic
Indeed.
motivation is outside motivation. For example, if mom and dad say, if you get an A, we'll buy you an Xbox, for example. That's outside motivation.
Yeah.
But intrinsic
Mhm.
motivation is where the motivation comes from within, and the
Mhm.
ability to just dream up something, write some code, and create it. There's nothing more motivational for the child than that. So that's problem solving. As far as critical thinking, remember, when you are writing code, you have to think logically. You can't just give a
Okay.
computer vague instructions. Like, for example, if it's a
Mhm.
hot day and I say, Razia, bring me water. You're not going to bring me a bucket of water, obviously. You're going to bring me a glass of water because you understand context. Now, computers, when you're coding them, don't understand that context. So you have to be precise in your language. You have to break down what you're saying to the computer and speak to it in that way. And I recommend, not just for kids, but for moms also, learn to code.
Mhm.
Talk to me. I've got some free
Wow.
coding tutorials for moms also. You'll see how
I'm
enjoyable
gonna
it
take
is.
up. I'm gonna take you up on that. Definitely. We're gonna learn all the time from cradle to the grave. Oh, that's so wonderful,
Absolutely.
and you're talking about learn how to basically feed the computer whatever system you're using because, I'm smiling because I'm thinking about ChatGPT. It's like if you don't know how to communicate with it, it's going to give you the same thing that you're putting in. And it's all about communication. We were actually highlighting this that we can't communicate properly with each other. How do we want to do it then with AI, so to say? Now, coding, you've just, I think, put a light on it that makes it sound so interesting and exciting. Then I said, even I want to learn it, definitely. Now, let's face it, Milana, that in today's world, the kids have so many distractions. So, why do you think coding is also such a meaningful way for them to spend their time?
I'll give you the answer by means of a story. So there was a
Mhm.
kid, I think he must have been in about grade 8, attended one of my coding classes. His dad called me the next day. It was a good friend of mine. He says, what did you do to my son? I said, well, what do you mean? He says,
Yeah.
he was so engrossed in that coding that he forgot to even go to the toilet. And the moment he was done with the code, then he ran like a sprinter to get to the toilet. So,
Wow.
what we learn from this is that, in this age of distraction, and I love your question because there are tons of distractions, just to
Mm,
get the child to be able to sit in front of the screen and focus on that task of coding is itself a miracle because we complain about short attention spans and things. It's not that.
correct.
It's not
Mhm.
just that. It's also that what we are giving them to do is boring. If they perceive something, if we perceive something as boring, we're going to pick up our phone and start scrolling, right? It's
Definitely.
almost a
It's
natural
rough.
reaction.
Mhm.
But coding, because it's got that intrinsic motivation, because it uses technology, screens, because there's the act of creating something that you're going to be able to share with others to see, that in itself is motivational enough for kids. So it's a very good way to get them to focus and to build up that level of focus, and then you'll see it.
This is
I
so
and I, and
wonderful
I,
that we're
I
actually having
recommend to
this
moms.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go for it.
Can't continue. We were cutting off there, so I thought you were done. What do you recommend with mums? Tell us. This is Urban Women. The mums are listening, dads are listening.
I recommend to parents, get your kids onto coding. Do some simple I mean, if you go to our YouTube, IT Varsity's YouTube channel, there's lots of coding for children. Do it with them. Sit together and code with them. You'll see it's just a lot of fun.
So sit with them. This also then, I think, builds on family time, of connection, of togetherness, spending time, because often we are all lost on our own little devices, and we see it often even when we're going out to restaurants, coffee places, wherever. People are together yet not together. And that's the world that we live in. So this is a way that you can actually bond in a way that excites your child. Now, Maulana, I think everybody, as you said, has different talents. So even if children don't go into careers containing or pertaining to IT, what would you say is also the benefit of learning coding for them?
It's as you said, Razia, it's problem solving, because no matter what career you get into, heck, even life itself is all about solving problems day to day to day. We're faced with problems. And one of the issues I found, with students that are enrolling at my college is that give them a reasonably difficult challenge, and it's almost like they're up against a brick wall. They don't know how to solve these problems. So that's why I feel very strongly from a very young age, we need to teach kids problem solving skills. How do you look at a problem, break it down into smaller components, and then start solving each one, all those techniques. So I think problem solving, logical thinking, communication skills. One of the biggest problems these days is that we don't have the ability to speak clearly to each other. But coding forces you to speak clearly. Like we say, with that example of the water, you can't give a computer vague instructions and expect it to give you to make sense, to the computer. You have to be very precise.
We can't tell the computer, you should know what I'm talking about, like we tell each other human beings, right?
And the computer will just blink at you and just wait. So
sorry, I don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, it's all of these skills put together that will benefit them no matter what career they get into, and even in their personal, in their private lives.
I think it's so wonderful we're having this interview, especially after the speech and drama one that we had, because it highlights such important things that we need to definitely bring into our children's lives, because it's also, even though it's coding, it's still about communication, forcing children to be clear on what they want. And I think this is where we lack in a lot of things, is we don't get what we want because we're not clear enough. But as you've highlighted, and the times we're in is really going into that sphere and that direction around technology, around AI, and we have to learn the language, we have to learn how to navigate it. Thank you so much, Maulana. It's been so wonderful connecting with you again in 2025. Wish you the best, and until we connect again due to time, we're going to have to wrap up. 11:58 is the time. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
And that was Maulana Bilal Kathrada chatting with us about coding. I hope you found that exciting and interesting. It is time for me to wrap up. It is 11:58. Your Salah times for Durban as per Jamiat KZN Zohar begins at 12:10 and